Hey everybody, I'm Timm Holmes and this is Ask the Author. Happy to have you all with us tonight as we go through some questions. I hope that you guys become very active in the comments section. And I hope that I've got some emails that we're going to answer as well. Come in from some kids there who want to find out a little bit more about the author life. And so for those of you who don't know me, of course, I am Timm Holmes. I'm the author of 3 children's books at the moment. Peanut Butter and Dragon, Splashfin, Toothy Grin, and my latest, The Reno Buzz. And tonight we're going to be asking the author some questions. Now, I had a couple of kids email me in advance, and I think it's only fair. They got here first, so I will answer their questions. But feel free, anybody who's watching, throw your comments down below the video and ask your questions there, and I'll do my best to answer them all. If I'm not able to get to all the questions that are asked in the comments or by email, then I promise that I'll do my best to answer you personally via email or a message later, or I'll look to build your questions into a future episode of Ask the Author. And so without further ado, our very first question comes via email. Got it a couple of days ago from Mohammed. And Mohammed says this. He says, "Where do your interesting ideas come from? I have trouble thinking of interesting ideas." Well, that is a very interesting question, Mohammed, because they come from many, many different places. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you, though, is interesting is an interesting word, because I think more than anything else, when I was younger, I was really worried about making sure my story was exciting for as many people as possible. And it got in my way of just writing the story that I wanted to write. So I think the best advice I can give you before I start explaining a few of the different ways where ideas come from is whatever you think of, just make sure it's interesting to you. Don't worry about what others are going to think about your idea until you're done. That comes later. We worry about what other people think later. Just get your story on paper and have a great time writing it with whatever you're interested in. And that's important because writing something that you are interested in, we will feel your passion. We will feel your love for the characters and the different subjects you bring up if you write about what you're interested in. Because you're not alone. You never are. There's tons of people who love the same stuff you do. Now, as far as where I get my ideas and where generally people get ideas, I think one of the best ways is to ask questions. And what I mean is, and I think no matter what else I say, I think the biggest overarching, the umbrella question that you might be able to get away with is, what would happen if? What would happen if? And then come up with something that finishes that sentence. I think that's probably the greatest question to ask. And it doesn't matter if it's silly or serious or ridiculous or maybe sad. It will always create a wonderful beginning of an idea to build off of. And so sometimes you can ask questions like real ones, like what are the proper conditions for a tornado to begin? Because maybe whatever you're writing about, maybe your characters are being threatened by a tornado. You want to make sure that the weather conditions are just right so it sounds like like it would actually happen. Or maybe how long would it take to walk around the world? That's a great question. Can you actually do it? Can you actually walk the entire circumference of the world? And if you can't, how would you? And why? Why would a character walk around the world? So these are some great questions to be able to ask. Now, the other way to go about this as well is asking silly questions. And silly questions is, if a cat had 2 heads, would both of them still meow? Or would one of them bark? That's definitely something interesting to think about. Or, if the sky turned green, why is it green? What would cause it to turn green? So those are some silly questions to ask. Now, the other way to do it as well is the unexpected. And what I mean by the unexpected is it could be fascinating, it can be funny, or it can be free from the rules, but putting together 2 unexpected things. That's sometimes a great idea for the beginning of a story, where you take, I don't know, maybe a peanut butter sandwich and a dragon. Those don't normally go together, but isn't it a fun story when you do? Or maybe a shark and you make the shark friendly. That's not normal. That's not what we normally hear about sharks. Maybe that can be fun. Or bubblegum and toilets. They don't go together, but I bet you there's an interesting story there. Or maybe elephants and a hotel. Those could be kind of cool too. So sometimes putting the unexpected together is a great way to come up with an interesting idea for a story. And so I made some notes here for Mohammed because I had lots of ideas for him. One of the other things that happens, I build a lot of real life scenarios, and real life things end up in my stories. And sometimes it's a silly story, sometimes it's a family joke. One of the ways we eventually did this was with the Reno Buzz. And so the Reno Buzz came from a family event where my youngest son, Cooper, he was afraid of the shower. He didn't like the sound coming out of the water, coming out of the big top, out of the spout. He didn't like the sound of the shower. It made a bit of a buzz, he thought. And because it was water falling down, it was kind of like rain. And so when he was very young, he would point at the shower head and he would go, Reno Buzz, Reno Buzz. And that was his name for what he was afraid of, was the buzz of the rain of the shower, the Reno Buzz. And that eventually became the name of a character, an invisible, friendly character that you could only see in falling water, in the waterfall, in rain. And that was the basis for the story I eventually made up at bedtime for the boys called The Reno Buzz, and it became the basis for my third book. So the other thing I built into that story was the fact that Cooper loves to dance. And so that's why we had a dancing element in the Reno Buzz, is because of that whole tying it into Cooper's entire experience. So you can build these real life family moments and make them really silly and exaggerated. And that's a great way to do it, is exaggerate this, the small little boring, silly little family things and make them a bigger deal. Now, Vanessa, I see you've got a question. I'm just going to finish answering Mohammed's and then I'll get to yours, all right? So the other way that I've come up with some ideas is I overhear conversations. Maybe I'm on the bus, maybe I'm walking down the street, maybe I'm in a park, but I overhear different conversations. And maybe someone says, that sandwich was not what I expected. Maybe he just means, hey, it had more mayonnaise on it, right? But maybe it wasn't what it expected because it grew legs and ran away. It could be the beginning of a really great story. Sometimes people watching is a great way to do it as well. You watch people move about their lives at the park, at the beach, and you see what they're doing from afar, and you're wondering, he's acting kind of funny. She's doing something I don't recognize. Why are they doing these things? And you start to think from that angle. And so sometimes people watching can be kind of a cool way to do it. Now, getting inspired sometimes can be a little difficult, especially when we're sort of staying at home and staying safe and we see the same four walls all the time. And getting inspired is a little difficult sometimes. What I like to do is I like to visit an animation or a computer graphics website. And I see the different portfolios that different artists put up. And I take some of I take photos of a few of the different pictures that I really like. And I take maybe 5 or 6 different pictures and I line them all up on my computer, on my desk, whatever. And I line them all up and I try to make a story that connects all of these previously unconnected images. And that can be a great idea for a story in itself as well. Now, my last thing for Mohammed, this is a really long answer, Mohammed, so I hope you had a notebook with a big pen. But the last one is I actually use an app called Inspire Me. It's called Inspire Me Word Generator. It's a free app, and you can set it up so that you can just press a little refresh button on it, and it shoots out 3 random words. And you keep flicking that refresh button until you like the 3 words. And that allows me to put together a lot of the story starters. And if you've joined us on Sunday, you know that I have my story starters that I use at my workshops, my Start a Story workshop, that I present to you every Sunday morning. And a lot of those have been created using this particular app to create a sentence that I build off of, and then I make an image to match that sentence. So sometimes getting inspired can be as easy as that as well. Mohammed, that was a great question and a really long answer. Now, my friend Vanessa has also asked a question, and Vanessa, it's very convenient. Vanessa, you asked what my favorite book is, I believe, here. Let me double check here. We've got, what is my favorite book that I've written so far? So I had another young lady email me a question, and her name was Lena, and Lena asked what my favorite book is. So I think I have to answer both your questions a little bit differently. So, Vanessa, my favorite book that I have written, I've got to say, I love all my books for different reasons. Peanut Butter Dragon, Splash Fin Tooth Again, The Rainbow Buzz, they all have a different fun part. The Rainbow Buzz is, well, quite frankly, you get to have a dance party because of course a song, you can download a free song when you buy the book. And so that song, it's great exercise. And I didn't realize before we released the book, and I had to do dance parties in front of classrooms, I was not in shape enough to do these dance parties. So it's actually a really lot of fun because of that. Splash Fin Toothy Grin is a lot of fun because you get to play the game Splash Fin Toothy Grin throughout the telling of the story. And I love games. But I think if I had to pick a favorite, it is probably the first one. Peanut Butter and Dragon was the first story that I'd ever made up for my boys. And it was the first story we'd ever turned into a published book. And so I think more than anything else, my boys gave me two dreams. They gave me the dream of being a daddy, and they gave me the dream of becoming an author because it is their story that launched my career as an author and why we're standing here having these conversations right now. So I think Peanut Butter and Dragon is probably my favorite. I also have a lot of fun doing the deep, deep dragon voice. Now, Lena, your question was, what is my favorite book? And if you ask an author what their favorite book is, that's really hard to choose. It really, really is. Now, my favorite book, I can't answer that. I have to put an S on the end. And Lena, just for you, I scavenged through all of Malcolm and Cooper's and my bookshelves. And in a very short time, Lena, I'm going to show you 20 of my favorite books. We have Slinky Malinky. Slinky Malinky was written by Linley Dodd. Linley Dodd, Slinky Malinky, you will probably never find a book with more musical rhyme to this particular book. The words are beautiful. It is so much fun. On Poppy's Beach, my father-in-law is from the East Coast of Canada, and he, instead of being called Grandpa, we call him Poppy. So my boys call him Poppy. And so this is a really important story for our family, and it's a really sweet story of spending some time with your grandparents. Then, there's No Such Thing as a Dragon. No Such Thing as a Dragon by Jack Kent is all about an invisible, or is it, dragon who begins to grow and grow and grow the more it is ignored. And it becomes a huge adventure. And I'm sorry, this is the best thing ever. Mo Willems, the pigeon finds a hot dog. And it's got a great message about sharing in there as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning in, you're just joining in, we're asking the author all sorts of questions. Feel free, as I answer young authors' questions here, to drop in your own questions into the comments, and I'll answer as many of them as I can this evening. We have The Fox and the Falling Leaves. So Lena, The Fox and the Falling Leaves is a beautiful story about a fox who's very worried about the leaves that are falling off of the tree that he lives nearby, and the tree is his friend. And he's really worried. He tries to keep the leaves on the tree, but he doesn't recognize that it's autumn and what happens in autumn where the leaves begin to fall. Then, of course, we have Pete the Cat. And really, any Pete the Cat is fantastic, but this particular one, his 4 groovy buttons, is a lot of fun to read. Then, a very interesting story that I absolutely can't spoiler. I absolutely can't spoiler the ending to The Crocodile Who Didn't Like Water, but you weren't expecting this. That is all I'm going to say. It is a wonderful story about being yourself. Splat the Cat. Splat the Cat learns to go to school. He's really worried about his first day of school. And so he takes his friend the mouse to school, And you think that goes well in a school full of cats? I don't know. And then, of course, there's Thing Thing. Thing Thing is written by Carrie Fagan and with pictures by Nicholas Debon. And it is another tale about a misunderstood-looking creature. And then we have Yuck, a love story. And Yuck, a love story is by Don Gilmore and Mary Louise Gay. And Yuck, a love story is about a new neighbor who's a girl. And our main character, he thinks she's really yucky. But really, maybe he thinks something different. Oh, William Joyce. William Joyce and the Mischievans. Now, this reads like a scientific account of strange things that happen to you, including where does your belly button lid come from? And where did that TV remote go that you lost? Where'd it go? The Mischievans will answer that. Now, for the older folks in my audience, we got a chapter book here, The Lightning Thief. It's the first in a series, and I love Greek mythology, and this is a wonderful series all about a character named Percy Jackson who discovers that he is actually a demigod. He is a son of a god and a human. And so he's got some powers, and there are a lot of adventures to go on, especially because he's being falsely accused of something. Here in Ottawa, there is a lovely author. Her name is MC Goldrick. And she has a series. This is the first book in the series, Time Flies, and this is the maiden voyage. And what I love about this series of books is that you've always wanted to be the fly on the wall and see what happens when you're not around. This book does that and more. There's a little bit of time travel involved. And at the back of the book, all sorts of scientific facts about flies, and so you get to learn a whole bunch as well. That's MC Goldrick right from here in Ottawa. This is so weird. Aaron Blabley does an amazing job with The Bad Guys. This whole series is a graphic novel series. It gets your resistant readers reading. It is so funny. Just enough poop humor to make the kids happy, but not enough to turn off mom and dad. And with so many characters, it's a great opportunity to do lots of silly voices. Now I see here, we've got We Are in a Book. We Are in a Book is the story, of course, of Gerald and Piggy, another Mo Willems book, but this series is so much fun. I love the art. It is so simple, and the story is told through dialogue bubbles between the characters, and it makes for a really easy read for younger readers, and a lot of fun for a bedtime story read. Then we have The Dark. I love The Dark by Robert Munsch because it's a little bit different. It's he takes something that could potentially be really spooky, and he turns it kind of on its head and makes it a little bit silly. And he does it with a brave little girl. And I love this kind of twist to what you would normally expect. And here we are, How to Catch a Star. Now, How to Catch a Star by Oliver Jeffers is one of Oliver Jeffers' amazing books. But this one is a very sweet tale, as most of his are. But this one in particular, because there's a beach involved and stars, and my family is we love being out near water and seeing the sky of stars. This was an important one for us. And we've got 3 more. Here we are, 18, 19, and 20. The Book with No Pictures by B.J. Novak. Book with No Pictures literally has no pictures, but it's an awesome book to read aloud because it makes whoever's reading it say all sorts of silly sounds and words. You'll always have giggles with this book. Then we have The Tickle Tree. This is almost a poetic book, rhyming all the way through. Gorgeous art. Written by Chase Strathy and illustrated by Polly Bernatine. It is a wonderful treasure of a book and gets the kids all settled and cozy for dreaming. And then, I love this. It's kind of like an old gumshoe private detective kind of touch to it, called Tough Fluff by Scott Nash. And it is one of the books that is just a great read, and I wish there were a ton more of these. It's an absolute blast to read, where we solve a mystery, and as you look through the pictures, you can almost start to put the clues together yourself. So the question is, can you solve the mystery before Tough Fluff the rabbit does? So those are some fantastic questions from you guys. And I think I've got a couple more here. So let's see what we got here. What made you create the story? This is from Phelan and Lilith. And what made you create the story Peanut Butter and Dragon? Well, if some of you don't know, and it doesn't look like Phelan and Lilith do, but Peanut Butter and Dragon was created because, well, my two boys, Malcolm and Cooper, they love bedtime stories. And we would read, my wife and I would read to them every night before bedtime. But of course, probably like you guys, they had their favorite books. So Mom and Dad, we got really bored reading the same stories over and over again. And so I decided one night, I've been creative. I've been writing since I was about 8 years old. I've been working at becoming an author. I'd never tried children's stories before, but you know what? I think I can make up a story for you guys. And that night the boys were like, no, Dad, we want a story. We want a real story. A real story? No, I promise it'll be good. He's like, no. And I think what they meant was they wanted something they could touch and feel, a real book. So I convinced them, I begged them, and I convinced them to give me one try to let me make up a story for them that night. And I guess I did pretty okay because there have been many other times I've made up stories for them, and we've had a grand old time. In the Malcolm and Cooper universe, I've released 3 books, but there's close to 15 or 16 different stories. So we'll see how many I get to put out into the world. But that night, I asked the boys, I said, well, what do you want to hear about? Now that you've given me permission, what do you want to hear about? And so they thought about it for a bit. They picked their nose for a little bit. Well, you know, they're kids, it happened, right? And then they said, we want to hear about dragons. And I went, ooh, that's a really good beginning. How would you like your story to end? Do you want a scary ending or a surprise ending? Or maybe you want a happy ending? And so they chose a happy ending, which as a dad, I was pretty okay with for a bedtime story, right? And so then I asked them, well, what would happen in the middle of our story? What would happen if a hungry dragon landed in the neighborhood? What would it eat? Now, my oldest son, Malcolm, he's always been very serious, a bit of a scientist. And he looked at me and said, well, Dad, dragons eat sheep. So obviously the dragon's going to eat sheep. And then I said, okay, Malcolm, that's not a bad idea. Cooper, what do you think? And you got to understand, Cooper's like a bit of a goofball. And so he made a big show of thinking. And he went like this. He went, oh, I don't know, what's a dragon going to eat? Oh, licorice, lollipops, popsicles, I don't know. It can eat anything. And then he finally gave me his answer. And do you know what it was? Now, a lot of people guess that it was peanut butter. Nope, that would be too simple. Cooper looked at me with his big goofy grin and his big shining eyes, and he said, Dad, I think the dragon, I think it's going to eat my brother. And we went, ew, no, the dragon can't eat your brother. That's gross. No, oh, that's nasty. Now, I knew that both boys loved peanut butter sandwiches, so I said, what if the dragon ate peanut butter? And they both went, yay! So I knew right then I had to tell them a story about a hungry dragon who ate peanut butter sandwiches, and we had to have a happy ending. And that is how Peanut Butter and Dragon came to life. But it wasn't until months later that I told a few more stories that we actually got the idea to start, maybe some of these stories were pretty good, maybe we should start fleshing them out and really putting them on paper and trying to turn these into real books. And that's when our adventure began. So great question from Fallon and Lilith. Thanks, guys. Ladies and gents, we're almost wrapping up. I think we've got some great questions we've answered tonight. We should probably leave some for the following weeks. But if you want to sneak in one last question before we disappear, type it up real quick there. While you're typing up your last minute questions, let me tell you what's coming up. We are doing this tonight. It's Thursday night. Saturday, we've got our next story time coming up at 7 p.m. on Facebook Live. I'd love to see you guys there. And then the very next morning, Sunday morning, we're going to have yet another story starter to try and get you guys a chance to be creative and create a story. And if you listened earlier this week on my story time on Tuesday night, I shared a couple of stories that were created by young authors. And I'd love to do that with yours. So if you get a chance to check out this past Sunday's story starter, and you have a chance to write a story, send it my way by email, and I'll do my best to share it on Saturday's story time. Or wait for Sunday morning, and I'll get you something brand fresh new, and you can try again next week. So ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate your time. If you like what's happening here, please do me a huge favor. Give me some support by telling 3 people that don't know about me what's happening at timmholmes.com. You can go there and get free downloads of activity guides and crafts to get your children creating stories. And heck, there's no reason that you guys can't create them either. Parents and grandparents can create stories too. Everybody can get in on the game. And then, of course, at timmholmes.com, you can actually go to the menu, click down into the bookshop, and you get a chance to order my books, Peanut Butter and Dragon, Splash Fin, Tooth Grin, and the Rainbow Buzz. I can get them autographed and mailed out to you. I'll sign them however you like them. But guys, again, thank you so much for all of your support. Thanks for watching tonight. Share this video if you get a chance with your family and friends. Take care of yourselves, take care of your families, and have fun creating. Have a great night.